I'm a big fan of the Resident Evil and Silent Hill series, especially the classics in the first three Silent Hill and Resident Evil games. From the aesthetic to the outlandish story and the janky tank control action the classics offer. So when I heard about Crow Country, I knew this game is something I definitely have to try. Huge shout out to my boy Papacoatijodi for gifting the game on Steam. I truly appreciate it. Show my boy some love and check out his channel. Crow Country is a survival horror game developed and published by SFB Games. The game looks like a mix of the style of Final Fantasy VII plus classic Resident Evil and all of its PS1 goodness, with a dash of that cozy feeling because of how the game looks. I guess you can call this game an RE clone, but the game does have its own solid identity. The game is a great mix of puzzle solving and survival action goodness. If you enjoy the tank controls and the janky aiming old school Resident Evil has, this game is made for you. Crow Country doesn't shy away from its inspiration, however, it does have its own charm to it. The setting is absolutely perfect, and it also gives off that unsettling feeling the theme park in Silent Hill 3 provides. It also evokes that same feeling Petscop provides, and I know that's not a real game, but it has those similar story beats the late 90s PS1 horror games give. You can draw parallels to a few different games, however, Crow Country is classic survival horror done right. And it's definitely a love letter to the enjoyers of the 90s PS1 survival horror genre. We're going to delve into the story of Crow Country, so take this as your spoiler warning and you can jump onto the next timestamp if you don't want to get spoiled. The story begins in 1990 and we're introduced to Agent Mara Forrest, firearms specialist. The way that the text says "don't mess this up" feels like she's an amateur cop and has been rehearsing her lines. She then arrives at Crow Country, an abandoned amusement park near Atlanta, Georgia. Mara is sent to investigate the now-defunct amusement park and look for its owner, Edward Crow, who has had a missing person report filed about him. Upon successfully entering the park after shooting the lock on the gate, Mara discovers the horrors that lie within the abandoned amusement park. Mara finds clues in the park's restroom and sees a magazine with an article from a certain Arthur Mole, who is an aspiring paranormal photographer. You get a first glimpse of what lurks within the amusement park. Delving into the only area of the park which is not locked, you see a banner with blood etched on it. 2106. A number that doesn't make sense. Is it a code to a lock? We'll find out more about this number later on. A little further from the banner you came across is Arthur Mole. He is injured and has his back on the barrel. Arthur explains that all he wanted was to take a clearer photo of what he shot back in 1989. He'll tell you that he was attacked by monsters. You'll be given one of the first choices to make in the game. This can affect the story, but in my opinion, it doesn't really make a lot of difference unless you're that type that wants to save everyone a la Until Dawn or Fear and Hunger 2 Termina. After helping Arthur back to your vehicle, you explore the park and try to find clues on the whereabouts of Edward Crow. You can go back and check up on him before going back to the amusement park, and you can catch an easy achievement for that. You can go back to where you found Arthur and roam around since the game has not spawned any enemies as of yet. You can find the area where Arthur broke in and an unfinished ride. There will be rooms that are locked and will ask you for certain key items to open them. You'll also notice a giant crow robot in the middle. I assume this must be the mascot or the machine that greets people into the amusement park. Once you make your way towards the lounge, you will encounter creatures called guests. This is where the combat of Crow Country shines. It is very similar to old school Resident Evil games where you have to hold the R1 and plant your feet and use the right stick to aim. I'm not gonna lie, the audio when you first encounter the guests is wild. It sounds eerie and a bit unsettling, and which truly captures that sense of dread when you play those old 90s horror games. After defeating the guests, you see a box filled with gold ore and wonder why they have so much, and then you can go into the first safe room in the game. The lounge is very chill. The safe room music gives off that cozy vibe, and that crackling sound those embers make when you're near the fire truly enhances the feeling of safety inside the lounge. You can find a map inside the room and supplies. You can find clues on what to do next via the staff notes on the walls. After relaxing in the lounge and grabbing the map, you can head back to the area where you found Arthur and learn that the area is called Fairytale Town. While you make your way from the corridor back to Fairytale Town, the game does a great job with a jump scare that's very reminiscent of the dog scene from Resident Evil 1. I did enjoy that nod, and it caught me a bit off guard. In Fairy Town, you can find a code near the barrel where Arthur was, and you can use that code to go inside the Great Fairy of the Fairest Forest and access the Fairy Pond. Once inside, you find yourself in a room with a ventilator that can emit poison gas. You have to turn the valve enough times so that it goes in the white area of the gauge, and you can press the switch to the pump so that it cleans and filters out the water in the pond. If you make a mistake, you'll have to override the ventilation system and do it all over again. Once you succeed in cleaning the pond, you shoot a target on a tree and get the bronze key. The bronze key will open the next area that you have to run to, Haunted Hilltop. Your time in Haunted Hilltop will be rather short, and this begins the backtracking you have to do. First on your list in the Haunted Hilltop is the Crypt. Before going into the Crypt, a map can be picked up and then you can meet Julie, the locally feared attorney trying to get into the utility corridor. To get into the utility corridor, you'll have to solve a puzzle inside the Crypt. The puzzle is very clever, and it's not too hard because you'll have to solve it via rotating the gravestones according to the direction they're supposed to be on the names found on the tombstones. This becomes a recurring thing for Crow Country. The game is not afraid of dropping obvious clues in your face while also trying not to make it look super easy. After clearing the puzzle, the gate opens, however, a creature comes out of the wall and you're faced with your first boss fight. This thing is called the Thorough. This thing can be dispatched with an entire magazine of your handgun. After killing the Thorough, you can look around the crypt for items and you can find gasoline, which will come in handy later on in the story. You can then open the gate and go into the utility room. This utility room is the second safe room in the game, and you can find another map here. There is a safe that you have to unlock with a code. The clue is right next to it and it will ask you to input the date of Selina's death. After opening the safe, you get a crank. You can also open the door that's being banged on by Julie. Julie will ask you to help her clear out the table and she'll put up a bunch of documents. An image of Elaine Marshall and an attention note to Edward Crow. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why did Crow Country close? What happened inside the amusement park that it had to shut down? In comes Elaine Marshall. She's a 15-year-old girl who went to Crow Country with her parents in 1988 and got separated when they went through the crypt. Elaine found herself in a room where a man in a cage attacked her and infected her with a mysterious illness. Elaine finds her parents and they take action and sue Edward Crow. They demanded that Edward Crow pay for her medical expenses. This is also the reason why Julie is in the park, to have Edward Crow pay his due diligence. You can then head into the Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion will have 4 puzzles in it, however the one you'll need to solve is the puzzle with the grandfather clocks. You'll have to spin the clock wheels with the crank to a certain time between 10:20 and 11:15. After doing so, you can pick up an egg-shaped gemstone. With the gemstone in hand, Mara must now head back to Fairtown and go back to the swan boats. Upon reaching the swan boats, you'll have to find a way to control the swan at the edge of the room. You then have to put the gemstone into the swan's mouth so you can drive the swan at the edge of the room to you. Upon successfully driving it towards the edge of the water near Mara, you can get a chain. When I first got into this room, I saw the hint that said you might need something shaped like a neck to put in the swan's mouth. When I first saw the oars in the utility corridor near the lounge, I thought you could pick one of those up and put that into the swan's mouth to fix it. However, that didn't work for me. Sometimes, thinking too hard can be a detriment when playing these horror games with puzzles. After getting the chain, you can then go into the small cottage near the Great Fairy. The cottage can be accessed as soon as you get the bronze key, however, you can find a pump and a crane and a mounted flamethrower. To solve this puzzle here, you'll need to have gathered 3 items. The crank from the utility corridor, the chain from the swan room, and gasoline which can be found in the crypt or in the machine room accessed via the second utility corridor where you meet Julie. Once you have all 3, you connect the crank to the pump and it pours liquid into the hole. You can put the gasoline inside the mounted flamethrower's gas tank, and lastly, use the chain on the crane and pull up the thing the chain is holding. I readied my pistol when the thing was being pulled up because 1, this is a horror game and I was thinking maybe it'll be a boss fight, and 2, what if it was a jump scare? After pulling the chain, you see something covered in resin. You can use the mounted flamethrower to burn it off and pick up an item called the Woeful Mask. After getting the Woeful Mask, you have to run towards the Haunted Hilltop and go to Witchwood. You have to insert the mask in the red slot for it to open the gate. In my head, it's a funny nod to those masks you find in a theater because the first mask that was already inserted was a happy face. Once inside, you'll have to go through a hedge maze and activate some stone columns to go deeper into it. After navigating through the maze, you can reach into a pool of water in the middle of the maze and pull out a trident. You'll need this trident later. The maze then spawns in enemies. This is actually a great scare because it felt like it was something an actual witch would do after disturbing her brew. And I love this touch by the devs. You can choose to fight all of the enemies or just run out and avoid them. This ends your time in the haunted hilltop, and now you must head over to the next part of the amusement park, Ocean Kingdom. The devs did a little scare here when you go through the gate, and the spikes retract a bit. It does get a bit old, especially if you have to go back and forth between the areas. You can access Ocean Kingdom right before doing Witchwood since you already have the crank. However, the only areas you can access would be the arcade, the submarine, and Neptune's palace. You first must go through the arcade and you meet one of Edward Crow's associates, Marvin Trumbull. He'll talk about how he was visiting Edward Crow and is back from a business trip abroad. He'll start asking you a few questions about your gun, asking you what model, which Mara could have easily answered since she's a firearms specialist, but decides to dodge the question. After talking with Marvin, he leaves the room and you gain access to the staff hallway. This room connects to the lounge and Neptune's palace and another door to the fairy pond. In the middle of the staff hallway, you'll see a giant cage in the middle and you can hear breathing inside it. You can open the door to this cage, however, nothing will happen to it unless you find Tolman's office's door with a silver lock on it. After you find the door with a silver lock using violence to solve the problem, you can exit out of any of the passages and can go back into the staff hallway to spawn the second optional boss. This time, this boss will look like a spindly beast on all fours, and it looks really creepy and moves a bit fast, but you can take it out fast with a few shots. After defeating the second boss, you can head right into Neptune's palace. You'll notice there are 4 sea monster heads in a glass and a locked chest in the middle. You'll need to activate all 4 sea monster heads and have them face the center so you can get the contents of the chest, a silver key. Now that you got the silver key, you can now go back to Tolman's office. Tolman acts like he's been expecting you and just goes really uncooperative. You'll need to activate the elevators going down the excavation site. For clues on how to solve the puzzle, you'll be watching 4 different tapes that give you letters or keys to play on the keyboard in the room. After solving the puzzle, the underground is now open. You can run back to the arcade and go complete the puzzle of hitting scores on each of the games. You'll have to insert the silver key to turn on the lights. The puzzle is very self-explanatory. You'll have to score 1 right answer on the mermaid quiz, 2 on the dolphin game, 4 on the star collecting game, and 8 on the light rail shooter. You can reset it if you mess up. There aren't any consequences aside from time, so you can actually have fun and sink in some time in the arcade if you want to. After completing the puzzle, you get a data disk or floppy disk since we're in 1990, or as the younger people say, the save button or the save icon. After getting the floppy disk, in my opinion, the optimal route of doing things would be heading over to the dungeon, inserting the floppy disk and solving the puzzle for the mermaid and getting an acid bottle. Once acquired, you can run towards the haunted mansion and use the piano and open the door leading to Crow's office. The clues are found in bookshelves, but the one you need to open the door is DEAD or dead and play that on the piano. Once inside, you can meet Natalie, the daughter of Edward Crow and the person who made the missing report for her dad. She'll be puking in a corner and you can help her with an antidote. You can leave her too if you want to. Natalie will give you a clue that the door is electrocuted and you'll have to find a generator and destroy it underground. After helping her, or not, you can go down the elevator and this will take you to the underground. What I can tell you is, fuck this area, it gives off that otherworld vibe Silent Hill gives off. There are gates that are locked and you'll have to find a lever that unlocks all of the gates in the underground. You'll have to find the break room and open the gates from there. Once you pull the lever, you're in for another boss fight. After killing the third Thorough, it'll drop a code for the exit. Now that all the gates are open, you can go to the northwest underground area and find an acid valve dripping and fill the acid bottle from there. You can run to the northeast underground to destroy the generator, and finally, there's one more room you have to go through in the underground, which is in the southwest underground area, and go through the gate that says Ruth Thursday. There's a computer terminal you can access. The clue on how to shut down this gas that goes up to Ocean Kingdom is on the lever and asks you to add the numbers on the computer to 50 and it stops the gas. If you do decide to check out all the rooms in the underground, you can find Marv and Tolman, and they'll drop some more information about the situation in the park. Marv says that the police are onto him and that all of his assets are frozen and he wants to talk to Crow. After doing this, you have to go back to the area where you found Natalie, which is the northeast elevator, and you have to go the opposite direction of Edward Crow's office, which leads to the theater in Fairy Tale Town. You have to raise the curtains and go down into the audience area of the theater. I'm not gonna lie, the theater did give off strange vibes, but all in all, there's just a couple of enemies you can kill or dodge and mix the water in the system with acid. There will be a valve you have to open which pours the acid on the Great Fairy. Like in the fairy pond, the fairy should be headless as it is holding the golden key that leads to Crow's office, so you have to shoot his head and activate the acid, and then melt the resin holding the key. Alternatively, if you have a flamethrower, you can melt it instead. We'll talk about the flamethrower later. After getting the key, you can go into Crow's office for some clues and find some more information on what's going on. Before I forget, during your entire journey inside the amusement park, Crow will call telephones across the park and drop tidbits of information regarding the situation, and you piece everything together this way. There's even a missable room if you don't check, and it's the office of Douglas Pike, one of Crow's trusted men. He unlives himself because of the guilt he carries. The guilt of causing Elaine Marshall pain. The guilt of knowing what happened to the guests. Once inside his office, there's an obvious room behind the golden statue of his wife. To access the room, you'll have to find a button by the photo of Edward and Natalie. Once you go inside, you can see a code and you need to run into the control room next and use the code you saw and activate the control panel. After completing this task, you fight the final optional boss in the game, and I love how the third and fourth optional bosses are just out of nowhere. They fight in slightly claustrophobic areas, which does make the fight feel intense. After defeating the final Thorough, you can head out of the room using the code 123456 via the buttons on the floor. There are die faces and you have to step on it in order so you can activate the gate and go out. Once you're out, you can go back to the middle of Crow Country and find a police officer in the area, Officer James Harrison. He'll be asking you a few questions and even tells you that there was a kid who slashed the tires of his vehicles and he had to ride a bike to the park. No lie, it's funny that he commandeered a pink bike too. After a few interactions with Officer Harrison, he says that he found Mara's boyfriend in the car, which is also a funny line. The best part of having Officer Harrison in the middle of Crow Country is that no enemies will spawn. Remember the thing I said about the crow robot you see early in the game? You can inspect this crow and find out that the crow is missing a battery and you'll have to go and find it. You'll now have to run towards Ocean Kingdom and open the door to the Seven Seas ride and its control room. You'll also have to go inside the delivery area as well, and you'll hear knocking from inside a box. Anytime I see these things that need opening, it feels like you're going to fight something, but instead it's Julie. Once you help out Julie, she'll say someone knocked her out and put her inside the box. Julie then says that she'll do anything to repay you. You can then have her operate the Seven Seas ride. After getting on the ride, you arrive at a certain area blocked by a whale animatronic. This is the puzzle you have to solve. The first box will move these animatronics, and the second box will raise them out of the water. You'll have to pick out the third mermaid and take the battery from it. After taking the battery out, there's a lever you can pull from the right side of the boat and it opens the door to the control room of the Seven Seas. You notice that Julie's glasses are on the floor and there's blood. Somebody took Julie. After getting the battery, you have to run back to the underground and go southeast into Route Tuesday. There will be connector claws that you can place the battery on and charge it until it's full. This time you'll have to backtrack to the crow and install the battery there. Once the crow is out of the way, you can now take the elevator down to the central underground area. The first room will be filled with enemies and your options are to fight them off or just run towards each side and turn the buttons on so you can open the gate and skip. In the next room, we find Officer Harrison dead. However, he didn't die of monster attacks. He died after being shot by someone. During my first run, I thought that Natalie shot him because there's an interaction that requires you to take the officer to her. You can choose to lie and say you don't know where she is. Back to Officer Harrison, after discovering his body, Mara then reads off his ID card, and this ID card was similar to what Mara has been carrying around. Then the reveal happens. Mara is not Mara, but is revealed to be Elaine Marshall herself. In the next room, you go in and it'll be the final puzzle you have to solve. You have to shoot these mining lanterns and turn them on to activate the gates. It will take some trial and error for you to do this, and once you open the main gate, you meet Tolman. You tell him that Harrison is dead. Tolman says that the monsters probably got to him, but Mara or Elaine, but we're sticking with Mara because Tolman calls her that. You then tell Tolman that Harrison was shot, and you don't know who did it, but then Marv shows up and starts saying that the cop could have found out about their operation and the feds will catch him, and What's to stop Mara from fessing up and throwing everybody under the bus? Before Marv could shoot, he falls into the depths of the underground after getting kicked by Julie. Surprisingly, she's alive, and she said that she got pulled into the vents by the guest, but she wasn't harmed. The guests sounded like they were moaning, crying, and trying to communicate. Mara then gives a rundown on the situation and introduces Tolman to Julie, and tells her that Natalie is in Edward Crow's office while Arthur is in her car waiting, and she's worried about him since she left him there for a while. Tolman then asks Mara what she's going to do, the thing that she was supposed to do since she got to Crow Country: find Edward Crow and talk to him. You then head into the next room with a clean pool of water. This actually fully heals you, and if you look into your status, you will see the status infected. You can then go down the ladder that leads deeper into the underground. This ladder going down built a lot of tension and made me feel like I was going into a giant hole or something. Or maybe something was going to grab me while trying to go down. It felt like something humongous or eldritch was waiting down for me. This really felt similar to the ladder you take nearing the end of Silent Hill 3. Upon reaching the bottom, there is an intercom machine you can interact with, and you get to talk with Edward Crow, and he tells you to grab the 5 vials on the desk before you meet up with him, and then he lets you in. You make your way to Edward Crow, and he looks terrible. Edward has been gravely infected by the bacteria that the guests have brought with them. Edward then explains the entire situation to Mara on what happened to the park. Here's the rundown. I'll be adding more information to this as well. Edward Crow's father passes down the land for Crow Country to him, which actually sits on these things called roots, which have been growing. These roots have an absurd amount of gold in them, and just like what every greedy human would do, they would cut these huge green tubes and extract the gold from within. And it's not just regular gold, it's pure gold, it's high quality gold. This leads Edward Crow to create fake documents that they found the gold in a mine in Brazil and to avoid the US government. Even the Joker was afraid of the IRS, so I don't know what got into Crow's head and why he wants to go against the government. Jokes aside, Crow partnered up with Marv and made sure that his name was not on any document, making Marv the fall guy. Little did Edward Crow know that these roots were part of a time machine. At the bottom of the park is a portal to the future. As operations in the park go on, the first of the guests have come through and was captured by Crow and put into the room in the utility corridor in Haunted Hill. This is where Elaine Marshall comes in, as she got separated from her family and stumbled into the room with the guests and got attacked and infected. Edward Crow was supposed to pay for Elaine's medical bills, however he didn't show up. Crow, instead of paying for the medical bills, had to create the cure himself. This isn't some T-virus, wildfire virus situation, but more like future bacteria infecting Elaine. And in this timeline, there is no cure to her illness. The incident happened in 1988, where human tech was burgeoning. The guests from the future come from the year 2106 and have been trying to communicate with the humans from 1988 to avoid the impending doom, in which the future is an uninhabitable, desolate wasteland. First, you'd think that the major problem in Crow Country would be the bacteria, but it actually feels more like an environmental message, and that 1988 was the last chance for humans to reverse the damage done to the Earth. Years go by, and Crow notices that the more they cut into the roots, the more grotesque and disfigured the guests become, as he tries to find a cure to the mystery infection that haunts Elaine, and with him being exposed to most of the guests, his own infection as well. The 5 vials Edward Crow has prepared is enough for the survivors you meet in the park. 1 for Arthur Mole, 1 for Tolman, 1 for Julie, 1 for Natalie, and the last one for you, Elaine Marshall, aka Agent Mara Forrest. Crow then tells you that he wants to go through the portal and see what's waiting for him in the future, and if ever he turns, Elaine must put him down. As he dips into the pool, Edward Crow comes back from the bright green portal. He has transformed into the ugliest motherfucker you can meet in the park, second to the goblin and the puddle. The fight with Crow can be challenging if you're not careful with your shots. Crow's health can be gauged by the color of the pool and how red it becomes because of his gore and viscera tainting it. After damaging Crow enough, the fight stops and he asks you to finish him off, and you just pop one more shot into Crow. You then get to see the survivors of Crow Country drinking their respective vials, and the credits roll. I'm not gonna lie, the game is wonderful. The story can be understood easily and leaves room for speculation. There's a lot of potential in the story. Did the portal close? Is the world free from the bacteria that gets brought with them? Is this a time paradox situation where the bacteria starts in 1988 and carries on to 2106? Is the world dying of climate change in 2106? What do these symbols mean? Did the humans from 2106 close the portal after seeing Crow? There's so much to ask, and hopefully this game sells well so that we might get a sequel. Who knows? You can tell that the game is good when people are left pondering on what's gonna happen next. Now that we got through the story, let's talk about some mechanics, secrets, and things I liked and disliked about the game. Since we played the game in survival mode, and at the end of the game we get a rank for completing story. The game gives you a rank by the amount of heals used and the number of secrets found. In my first playthrough, I tried being a completionist and ran through all of the rooms, pressed all of the buttons, and looked through almost every nook and cranny of what Crow Country had to offer. In my first run, I found 15 secrets. I won't be showing all of them so as not to spoil it for those who haven't played it, but I'll talk about the ones that I believe players should make sure to find in their playthroughs. First is the shotgun. You can find it in the safe room in Ocean Kingdom. The requirement for this one is to score 21 points on a shooting game in the safe room. The game does give you tips on how to hit this score, and I made sure to follow. Basically, you shoot 4 sharks and 1 dolphin, where each shark is 6 points, while the dolphin is minus 3 points. The next item the players need to find is the Magnum. I mean, what type of Resident Evil type game is without a Magnum? You can find it in the gift shop in the middle of Crow Country. To find the Magnum, you'll have to find a note with items Edward wants to buy for his daughter, and add the total cost of these items and put the sum, which should be equal to $19.75, into the cash register. Another thing you need to get is the flamethrower. It's hidden inside a train, and you have to fix the order of the trains via a computer in the room in the order of B for the engine, D for the first car, A for the second car, and C for the final car, or what people know who trains call it, caboose. You're gonna need the flamethrower to get an upgrade for the Magnum, and lastly, you're gonna need the running shoes. In other games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, being able to run past enemies without getting hit is a major save. It saves you in the ammo department and saves you in the health items department as well. Now that we have those quintessential secrets for your run, let's talk about game ranks. If you use less than 10 healing items and all the secrets are found, you get the S rank, which allows you to get the Crow Wings, which also allows you to fast travel between rooms. If you use more than 10 healing items and find all or most of the secrets, A rank nets you the Crow Launcher. It's a crow-shaped grenade launcher with crow-shaped unlimited ammo, and lastly with B rank, you would need to finish the game with some of the secrets and healed over 10 times. You would get the crowbar. It's a crowbar with a crow on it. Crowbar, get it? I skipped the hard mode of the game, however, if you do complete hard mode, you can get a crow hoodie. It doesn't really do anything, but you do get a cool cap. Next thing we're gonna talk about is Crow Quest, which can begin in a new playthrough. Think of it like finding those secret bobbleheads in Fallout, or finding all of those frogs in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. What you have to do is find 64 glass crows hidden in Crow Country. Now, you don't just have to hunt Edward Crow, now you have to find glass crows as well. This is going to be a murder because that's what you call a group of crows. Metal. After finding all 64 crows, you get new drip. Mara now gets blue hair, horns, and some darker clothes, and an unlimited handgun that shoots lasers. This is a wonderful bonus for dedicated players trying to 100% Crow Country. Let's talk about the things I love about Crow Country. The game is wonderful, it's brief yet is packed with secrets that you can find, and will also have some puzzles that will stump you the first time trying it. Some are easy, some are hard, and that just adds so much to the immersion. There's even those things that you think might be secret and are actually not. The game also loves throwing some red herrings around. The storytelling did surprise me a couple of times, and one thing I totally got tricked is the dungeon. There's an Iron Maiden that you can open and use. First time I saw it, I hesitated because Iron Maidens are medieval unaliving machines, and when I went in, it made a clicking and grunting noise. And my brain was like, nah, I can't believe I fell for an obvious instant death trap. But then it was actually a secret waiting to be found. The game does know how to turn up the atmosphere as well. The maze in Haunted Hill is absolutely chill while you're trying to solve the puzzles, and when you get the trident, the audio just turns into a horror fest, which really spooked me out a lot. Another thing I love is the storage room in Ocean Kingdom. This place is claustrophobic, dark, and there's something lurking in the corner. The worst thing about this is the enemy hiding in that vent. It makes a weird breathing noise which can really be anxiety inducing, and this really got me bothered trying to navigate the room and avoid getting attacked by the creepy fucker in the vent. When I did my second run, I used the crow launcher and took care of that noisy bitch. I know there are some obvious spots where enemies can pop up, and then this guy right here can suck it. Oh yeah, did you think you can freely dodge enemies without sustaining damage? Crow Country is filled with traps, bear traps, ceiling traps, crow traps that spew poison, poison traps on the ground, and last but not the least, fake resources. As a loot goblin, this has bitten me in the ass a lot of times. And it's not a bad mechanic. It's a great mechanic, to be honest. This makes you think of the things you pick up as you run around the park. You can tell if it's a fake item as it will have a purple tinge on it, so if you didn't notice that in haphazardly yoink things off of the ground, well, that's free damage to you. Crow Country also ramps up the difficulty. You get more enemy variety when you start opening up areas. It's a great progression sign, especially when you get the shotgun the first time and I saw that big ass dude with a bottle in his hand. Nah, I ain't going near that. Speaking of difficulty, Survivor mode is great as you'll have the ability to run even if you've sustained a lot of damage. Hard mode though will definitely give you a challenge. If you mistakenly take damage and are being chased by something quick moving and you need to run, well, you can't. You'll have to limp away and recover. This is actually great and will catch players off guard if they're used to being able to run around with low HP around the park, and suddenly you move slow and are unable to run when near death. You won't be able to rummage through the trash and use the vending machines for supplies too. Did I mention the camera? The game does not have a fixed camera angle and you can turn the camera around so you can properly inspect your surroundings. This does separate it from classic RE and Silent Hill games, and having the camera lock onto where Mara is looking when you aim is a nice touch, but can feel a little disorienting. Aesthetically, the game looks wonderful with some of the pre-rendered backgrounds and Mara looking very simple, however that adds to the charm. The juxtaposition of her purple hair to the lifeless amusement park is a joy to behold. The game looks like it's being played through a CRT filter, which does add a little spook factor to it. The scares in the game aren't just jump scares or anything, it's an environmental build-up type of situation, where puzzles can sometimes lead to scares or you wonder whether something is going to pop out of the corner after completing this section. The atmospheric vibe is just perfect, and remember, I talked about some puzzles. They don't feel like they're made to stop you and slow your progress. The puzzles feel organic, and you can find clues lying around on how to solve them. Staff notes are spread across the park on how to solve things, and that adds a whole lot of immersion because it doesn't feel like you're thrown into something that you should solve using moon logic, and feels more like employees talking about how to do this and that. Codes and passwords can be remembered easily as they are mostly a string of 4 digits, and locks are spread across the map with what key you're supposed to open them with. The game opens up with a lot of clues that you can take note of and can backtrack to. However, it's made a lot easier because there are shortcuts you can take. Let's talk about things that I didn't like about the game. I kind of felt sad that we didn't have a default melee weapon when we started the game. Being able to open bottles that hold items or barrels, it's not a bad thing to be honest. I'm just trigger happy, and when I see an enemy, I do get the urge to put them down. Another thing I didn't like is there seems to be an abundance of health items. When I finished my first run, I still had a lot of healing items on me when I reached the final boss. Inventory management isn't a thing, which does cut down on backtracking. However, you do have the freedom to stock up before heading into areas you think you might need that extra health pack or ammo. You can find shotgun ammo and handgun ammo, but magnum ammo is scarce, so you gotta be careful with that. Another thing I didn't like is the crow quest. It's a fun side quest. You get unlimited ammo plus a fun clothing bonus. However, it doesn't carry over to another save. So if you find all 64 crows, it's stuck in that save file that you basically had to search through every corner Crow Country had. As of the date of this recording, the developers of the game did put it in the roadmap that crow quest bonuses can be accessed in other save files, so that's a win. There's that long-ass ladder towards the end, and the devs put it in their roadmap as well that you would be able to slide down that ladder after doing a first playthrough. Lastly, this one is more of a jokey thing, but I didn't like that the game didn't have voice acting. It's great without it, it's atmospheric and fun. But hear me out, imagine hearing Mara flatly delivering an "oh my god" when this happens, or when she finally puts Crow to rest at the end of the game and says, "I'll give you something to crow about," then bang. I'd say it can make the experience a whole lot better. Crow Country is a great game, living up to the reputation of classic survival horror games in the 90s. It has great scares, fun secrets to find, and an amazing story that has you wanting for more. Who says that you need hyper-realistic horror when an indie pixel horror game like this can deliver the right atmosphere you need? Thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, feel free to give a like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and let me know what you think about the game. If you played the game, what's something you liked or disliked? Feel free to share with me and we can talk about it in the comments below. This has been your boy AndroidPAW, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.